tonight, Larry and I are here with Patrick Torres. Hey, Patrick.
Hey. Hi, Patrick.
So good to see you.
Hi, Larry. Hi, Kathleen.
Thank you so much for joining us. We're very excited to have you tonight. So, when did you first get into theater? What was that journey like for you?
Yeah, so I grew up in Odessa, Texas, which is the land of Friday Night Lights. So the book Friday Night Lights was a documentary sociology book about my hometown. And I was a football player. So that's what I thought. I wanted to be a football coach in my life. That's what I thought I wanted to be. But I was in, I think, 8th or 9th grade, and I saw my brother in a play. It was The Doctor in Spite of Himself by Moliere. And I don't know, it's something about just sitting in that crowd and watching him and just hearing the laughter, the communal laughter, and just kind of that response was so electric that I got hooked. I didn't do it for a while. I kept playing football. But then I would take, like, when I got to high school, I took a drama elective. And then I committed a cardinal sin in Odessa, Texas, and quit the football team to be in the drama program my junior year. Yeah, that's how I got started. It was just being starstruck by my brother.
That's amazing.
I went out for 9th grade football because I wanted to prove I was a tough boy. And the first day of football practice, we were running and hitting the dummy sleds. So I went at full force, hit that dummy sled. My knee hit it first. I fell down and chipped part of my kneecap and started crying.
Oh, no.
And the kids had to make fun of me that the dummy sled knocked me down.
There was the career down the drain.
Now, I guess I'll be an actor now.
Awesome. Well, that worked out. Right.
What was the first show you did, not after college, for theater?
After college?
Yes.
Oh, my goodness. The first show that I did, I will talk about the first show I directed after college, which was, oh man, that's such a good question. It was after college. So it was I'm going to talk about a show I assistant directed because it was really meaningful to me. Mm-hmm. So it was a show called Thief River. It was in DC. I was living in DC doing directing and casting internship at the Shakespeare Theater. Oh. And I had met this guy named Jeremy Skidmore, who was the artistic director of the Theater Alliance there. And the script is Thief River by Lee Blessing. It's an amazing story. Not many people have done it. That's the only production I've ever even heard about. But the reason that I bring that up is because I got to, it was really great. The director let me direct all these monologues. The monologues were kind of transitioned in between time periods of the play. And, oftentimes directors don't give assistant directors that much kind of stuff to work on, but I got to direct those monologues. And so that was like a really great and safe entry into directing in like a really major city in the country, is to direct those transitional pieces. And that introduced me to Jeremy, who's like a really dear friend. He's been a really important just friend and colleague in my career. He just directed Baskerville at Raleigh Little Theater last year, which won Best Production of the Year. He's amazing. And so I think that was really meaningful and really my first time to kind of have work presented in DC. So it was really great.
So cool. Would you consider him your mentor, or did you have a mentor for directing?
I really he is a mentor in a way. I think I've been really lucky to have several. My graduate directing teacher, Frank Kuhn, was a mentor in that he really taught me how to put craft to a lot of what he said was really good instinct, like how to take a vision and really put craft behind it. But I think my biggest mentor has to be my brother. My brother, he and he got me into it, right? And we encouraged each other. He passed away in 2016, and he was a director. He was teaching at Texas State, and he was who I leaned on. I would call him anytime I had a question or a fear about a show, and he would do the same. And so we kind of worked together as each other's mentors, I guess. But he was my biggest inspiration for sure.
That's great. Did he or anybody else ever give you great advice, whether it be about acting or directing or just theater in general?
Yeah, my brother had a few things that he would say a lot, and probably my favorite, and the thing that I always come back to is he would say, fail forward. So really taking this idea of like, how can a failure move you forward? And oftentimes we think about failure and it's not accurate, really. Like we didn't really fail. We're just beating ourselves up because our expectations are so high as artists. Um, but he really flipped that script and talked about how with every experience, even if it's something that's disappointing to you, there is a pathway forward, and you just have to find it. And the other thing that does, fail forward does, is even before you get to those moments of feeling like you failed, it just helps you be bold about it. Like, if I fail, I'm going to fail forward. That means I'm going to take big risks. That means I'm going to trust my instincts. And it means I'm going to learn a lot if it doesn't go so well.
Right.
So I've always appreciated that. And that's something that I carry with me for sure.
Oh, that's great. Do you have a favorite theater director?
Oh my goodness. There's so many. There's so many. I will talk about Robert Falls. The reason that I talk about Robert Falls a lot is like I've never met Robert or worked with him. But he directed a revival of Death of a Salesman on Broadway with Brian Dennehy.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the first show I ever saw on Broadway. I had traveled up there for graduate school auditions as an actor, which is funny because I had no business doing that really. Not a very good actor, but that's what I thought that was the pathway. I didn't realize that I could be a director, you know? So anyhow, that show, it just kind of like broke down like all these things that I thought theater was supposed to be. He just bent the rules. Like people weren't looking downstage all the time. And the set there was so very minimal use of scenery for that really epic show. And just the way that he put that whole thing together was really inspiring. And so I would say that in terms of like the first time I really felt like personally like blown over by a director was Robert Falls in that show.
I think young directors, they come out, they start directing and they think that they're inventing something new. And I had a mentor who was directing in the 1950s and 60s, and he was telling me, oh, we had a trapeze work during the show in the 1950s. I said, trapeze? You had actors swinging on trapeze in the 1950s?
Very cool.
Yeah, you know, because you think that there's a box that you have to play inside of. And in theater, we're really good at that. We're really like, here are the rules. You cheat out, you do this, you do that. And a lot of that's important, of course, like anything that you learn, whether that's sport or art or whatever, there's a foundational set of principles you have to like understand in order to then break those rules successfully. But really seeing that show was the first time. I remember like that show has probably my favorite performance that I ever have seen on stage, which was Elizabeth Franz, who played Linda Lohman. So like at the end, I mean, she had me like just wrapped the whole time. I never thought about Linda before in that play, really. You always think it's a play about the father and those two sons. And Linda, I think, gets overlooked a lot, but she tore me up. And so at the end of the play, you know, she was an older woman at the time, really frail, or maybe that was just the way she portrayed Linda. But the very final scene was just the actors were all on stage at Willie's funeral, and she placed a rose on the bare stage and then just laid down on that rose and gave that final little thing she says. Wow. And it's just like, I mean, I've never been so captivated by a performance ever. And it's probably like, it was also my first Broadway experience. So it probably just holds a special place in my heart because that was true. but I just, man, I walked out of there, and I walked out of the theater that day and it was snowing. It was my first time in New York City. So it was just like this perfect, like,
Right.
moment in the theater.
Wow. You just brought back a memory to me. I went to high school with Brian Dennehy's daughter.
Oh,
Really?
I think she was a year younger. But he would come and just like give lectures when he had a free day.
Wow.
And the nuns would go like, sure, come on in. And we would be like, who is this guy?
That's amazing. What a
And
force
as
of nature he was.
Yeah.
I mean, and to see that, I love that play, and
Yeah.
a man of that stature to be reduced to
right.
that kind of like self destruction that Willie goes through is pretty incredible. The whole
Right.
thing was really great.
Yeah.
You love like an actor like that who can just change his posture and become, a small man just by a gesture and stuff.
Absolutely.
Definitely. Did you have a worst audition story, either as an actor or a director?
Oh my gosh. My worst audition story as an actor was I was, like when I was an undergrad, I really, like I said, like I started college as a chemistry major. I wanted to be a pharmacist, and that's really, it's really funny. And so but I just kept getting drawn towards the theater program. And, I think I knew that that's what I really wanted to do, but I thought I have to make money because we were so poor growing up. But I just kept going back to the theater. And so I didn't really know how to navigate the theater world. And so I thought acting was the way that you went through it. And I can't sing at all. But we had to audition for, part of the undergraduate requirement was auditioning for every show. And so I thought, oh, this will be great. Like I can't sing, so I'll just do modern major general for my audition because you really just talk it. Well, I forgot all the words. So like I said like the first line, and then I just stopped. I just couldn't do it. And they were like, it's okay. You're nervous. Try again. I was like, okay. And so I tried again. I stopped at the exact same spot. And so they were like, one more time. So I started and I couldn't do it. And then they finished it for me from the audience. And I said, yeah, that's how it goes. And then I walked off stage.
Yeah,
So,
you sing pretty well. Thank you.
Yeah.
That was the worst. Absolutely the worst.
Right.
The funniest experience I've ever had as a director is there was a guy who came in and he was carrying like a big pumpkin on stage, and he said, I'm gonna do, I don't remember, one of the speeches from Hamlet, and he said I'm gonna do it as if Hamlet is falling. And so like we're all sitting there like, okay. And so he takes this pumpkin and he puts it on his head and then gets in a handstand position and does the whole speech in a handstand, and then at the end of it falls on his head and breaks the pumpkin open.
Wow.
And then he's like, thank you very much. And he walks out. And I was like, look, that was probably, like in, I don't know, the early 2000s. And here I am still talking about it.
That's hysterical.
Remember that audition. You didn't get the part though.
Okay.
Do you have a favorite show you directed?
Oh my goodness. There have been so many meaningful shows to me. So again, like I usually when I talk about like favorite experiences, it's usually about like moments that were I don't know, it was like the first time something happened. Mm-hmm. And I think for me that was in graduate school. In my class there were three graduate directors, and they asked me to direct A Piece of My Heart by Shirley Lauro, which we did here at Raleigh Little Theater a couple years ago. And I didn't direct that one, but that show was something that like they wanted me to do it. And I was the first graduate director they had asked to direct on the main stage. So I thought that was a big deal. Right. And was really, at the time, it was super nerve-wracking. And I was so intimidated by that script. It's like really tricky when you look at it to imagine how it's going to work. But it really, like I remember like we were feeling really good about Act One. And then the way that I saw that show is like Act One is like their journey into Vietnam. And it's these women who are nurses and, Red Cross worker and an entertainer. So they go into Vietnam, and it's the journey from stateside into Vietnam and their experience in Vietnam. And then Act Two is about them coming back to the States and how everything is different. So we had this moment where I just kind of said, you know what if Act Two is a mirror of Act One, but just there's an element that's different, right?
Oh.
So in Act One, there was a woman giving a monologue at an airport, and we had her stand still, and the rest of the cast was creating chaos by just walking all around her in this airport setting. And we flipped it in Act Two. She went to the mall and had this speech, and all the actors like froze in motion as if they were shopping at the mall, and she moved in and out of them.
Wow.
So we kind of mirrored everything on both sides of it, and that worked out really well. And there was one scene that we couldn't figure out, and I just went. What's funny is the woman that I'm married to now, Nikki, was my assistant director. And at the time, like we were just trying to figure this thing out, and I was like, I cannot figure this one scene out, especially in the relationship of how it mirrors the first act. And so I just went and like laid down in the middle of the theater, which is really funny. It's not like me at all. And I just laid there until I was hit with inspiration and figured it out. But we were all terrified. All of us, the whole cast, everybody was so scared that this thing was not going to work. And the kind of night that we did the student preview, people like just jumped to their feet and were crying, and like all this stuff was happening. And we were like, all of us were so shocked. And I just remember that feeling being like, yeah, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do.
Yeah.
So I'd say that probably has the most special meaning.
Yeah.
As a show I've done, but man, I'm proud of so many of the shows.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Is there a play you've always wanted to direct?
I want to do Death of a Salesman. Death of a Salesman. I talked about that when I interviewed here. Yeah. And I said, if I'm still here when I retire, or like when I'm getting to that age, that's what I want to do. I kind of want to do it. I want to do it when I'm like in my 60s, 70s. But I've amended that a little bit. And I've started, because I used to say that all the time. Like, I don't feel like you understand that show till you've lived a big part of your life. But now I've amended that, especially because of my experience with Sweeney Todd, which was great. And I really loved it. I was really proud of that production, but I want another crack at that one. There are these ones that you just want another shot at. And so I've amended it now. And I said, I want to do Death of a Salesman once now, so that when I do it, when I'm 60 or 70, I'll be really good at it, because I'll understand it.
Yes. Well, we interviewed somebody last week who's Tony, who said something very similar, that, now that he's aging, he wishes he could go back and play those older roles that he played when he was in his 20s, because he didn't really understand them. He did a good job, but he didn't really get it. So yeah, I get that. Wow. Huh.
Yeah, because of Kathleen, I actually enjoy playing much older characters. There's just something about the entire physicality of playing someone without being too showy. It's just a whole different feeling. And I did Prelude to a Kiss, and that monologue, he's got this wonderful monologue about losing your family and friends and accepting. It's just a beautiful monologue, Not a great play, but it's beautiful, beautiful monologue.
Right.
Yeah, the other one that I've always wanted to do is I have a good friend, Karen Zacharias, who's a playwright, a pretty popular playwright in the country. And she founded Young Playwrights Theater in DC, where I worked for a long time while I was there. And I've always wanted to collaborate with her on making a new adaptation of a play called Fuente Ovejuna. And what I love about that play, and the reason I would love to collaborate with her and direct a play by her, is it was the first time in the history of theater that a community was the hero. So this whole village works together to be the hero of the story. It's a great Latin play. So maybe someday that'll happen. Yeah.
Yay. Yes. Yes. Either as an actor or a director, what do you think is the best type of actor to be on the stage with. So if you're a director and you're going to cast somebody, or you're an actor and you want that co-worker, what is a good quality or qualities that actor should have?
Presence, and I think that we don't think about that. I mean, and that's really hard. Like, one of the reasons that I always talk about not being a very good actor is because I have that chemistry brain. I still see scripts as like chemical equations. Like, you put these elements together and you create a new thing. And I just like break it into those elements. I always call like scripts are like workbooks, And so why that means I'm not a very good actor is I can't be present, because I'm thinking, oh, but then that like equals that, and then that equals that, and like just putting the dots. And so it's very hard for me to get out of my head and just be present. And I think the job of an actor is so incredibly difficult, right? To, you've got lines to memorize, you've got movements to memorize, you've got, this backstory you have to have in mind, or whatever, all of those things that exist in one moment for the actor. Being present seems almost impossible, because there's so many. Your light's right here. Make sure that you hit your mark so that you can be in your light while trying to be real, And so I think actors who are able to do all that work and then just exist in the space and listen and react and take action, with all of that data in their head, but it's not getting in their way. I think those are the best actors, both to be on stage with and to work with as a director, because, I think it's so easy, because acting is so vulnerable, right? Like, it's crazy that we do it at all, right? Like, to stand on stage in front of a group of strangers and just have their criticism lobbied at you is scary, and it's vulnerable. And so I think part of one of the things that makes it hard to be present is just fear that you're going to do something wrong.
Right.
So when you can get rid of all that and just be present, and you stop worrying. I mean, as actors, a big part of acting seems to be a lot of worry about, like, well, is the costume going to look right? Or what about that person's, like, they start to become directors in a way, and you just want to shed that and be like, just be in the space and listen and react, which sounds simple, but it's probably the hardest thing in the world, because there's so much you're responsible for.
Well, I remember Larry asked me that question, like when you were acting like a lot, what was the best type of actor to be on stage with? And I said, somebody better than me, like somebody stronger who I knew I could just rely on if anything went wrong.
We all thrive to have that moment where we let the fear go away and we're just in the moment. And then you feel very, very brave,
Yeah.
I got lots of stories at RLT when I've had those moments, and it's just like, it just fulfills you completely. You can't get lost in the moment that you're enjoying so much.
Right.
But
right.
Yeah, it's great.
Absolutely. There was a guy named Wallace Acton, who was an incredible actor that I got to work with at the Shakespeare Theater Company. And part of my job as a directing fellow was to be on book during tech rehearsals. But he was so good at being present, right? And he had this really methodical way that he got there. Like, he was one of the smartest actors I ever knew. But like, the first read was like, it took like hours and hours. He was playing Richard III. Hours and hours, because he was just reading it so slow. But that was just part of his process to kind of get there. So we're in tech rehearsal, and like, I'm supposed to be on book, but he's doing like this work like 8 feet from me that is so brilliant. And so I just like get captivated and scared. And he starts saying line, but I don't even know he's saying line, because I just think he's like being intimidating and scary. And I'm just like wrapped up in it. And he's just screaming at me line. And finally I was like, oh shit. Sorry about that. Sorry. Sorry about that.
That's great.
But then I'm like trying to desperately find my place on the page to give him his line. And that was just one of those moments where I was like, it was just because he pulled that entire room in. You couldn't help but pay attention.
Wow. That's great. Well, Mark my husband always says, when we're doing our peak ensemble players, I'll have him be on book. And he never looks up because he's so afraid that that's going to happen and they're going to yell at him. So he'll really never look up. And then opening night will come and he'll say, I didn't know they kissed. I didn't know they did that.
Yeah. Yeah. I started having to really train myself to stay on that page.
You've already talked about some of your great moments. Do you say you have a best moment, or are there just too many for you to choose as a director?
Oh my gosh. There have been a ton. There have been a ton. I would say, I'll talk about one of the most recent ones that felt so good was like being in the audience on opening night of Curious Incident, where our lead actor, Michael Larson, was, he's a teenager with autism. And to just kind of like feel the love that people gave to him after that performance, which is like hard for anyone, but hard for a young person who, has life experience so aligned with that character. And to just, he was so nervous in the beginning of that process. He and his mom were like, can he do this? And I was like, he can absolutely do this, and I believed in him the whole time, but that role is insanely hard. And for him to knock it out of the park the way that he did, and to get all of that community support, like, to me, the best moments I've had as a director are when other people get loved on because of the work that they've put into something. Like, that's the best. I mean, I'm super happy and humbled to get any kind of praise for my work, but when the people in our community who've put all this work into a thing just get showered with praise, that to me is the most exciting stuff. And that show and that night particularly felt really incredible. It was a great moment.
Oh yeah. Either as an actor or director, what is the funniest thing that ever went wrong?
Oh my gosh. Oh goodness gracious. As I'll talk about as an actor. So we are performing this adaptation of Turandot. It was adapted by one of my professors in undergrad, and it was our American College Theater Festival entry. So, it was like, theater competition. We were super excited about it. We had advanced several, different through different competitions, and we were at the competition and before deciding if we would make it to DC and get to go to the Kennedy Center. And he gave me kind of the lead narrator role, which was kind of crazy, but it was really fun, and the ensemble was really great. So we just get to that performance, and I get like a third of the way into the opening, and I forget everything. And I was so terrified, and I just kind of looked at my scene partner, who we were so close because we were together the whole play, and she looks at me like, I don't know what you're gonna do. And I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. And then she kind of got me out of it. And then one of the ways, and we had practiced this, so it wasn't super dangerous. There was this stage combat slap that happened later in the play, and and it she would slap me, and then I would hit her back, and powder would come off of her face.
Yeah.
And so and it was a very improv-y kind of show too. We had some license, and so she slapped me, and then I hit her, and she said, "You couldn't have forgotten that part too." And it brought the house down because everybody knew, you could tell when someone forgets a thing.
Yeah.
And it was this amazing moment. It was the funniest thing, and I was so happy that she did that, even though it was at my expense.
Yeah.
We didn't make it to DC, and I don't think it was my fault, but that was a great, really funny moment.
Oh yes. Wow.
If you couldn't be a director or an actor, what other profession would you like to do in theater?
Oh my gosh. I think I would love to be a lighting designer.
Yeah.
Because it's a part of the I'm not great in help. I would say it's one of my weaknesses is like really helping like particularly the lighting designer and sometimes costume designer with kind of applying a vision to the show. I always like really love working with great lighting designers because I feel like it's such an integral part of the experience. And so I would love to be able to do it because I love it. I feel like lights tell so much of the story.
Right.
And as a director, you have to be really, really good at it, or you have to work with a lot of people you trust. Luckily, there's a lot of people here that I love working with because a big part of being a director is like focus, right? Where do you want the audience to look? And how do you make sure the story's clear? And lighting designers are so critical and crucial to that. And then what they can do with like tone and atmosphere and mood. Like I'm just so inspired by that. So that definitely would be what I would do.
I was just talking to some actors who watch Hamilton on Disney, and they said what they didn't like was that when you're watching a play, you can focus on what you want to focus.
Mm-hmm.
But in Hamilton or any televised production, they tell you what you're looking at. So.
Right. Yeah, because the camera points for
Right.
sure. But speaking of Hamilton, that lighting designer, Hal Binkley, just passed away last week.
Oh.
And he and I got to work together at the Shakespeare Theater. Again, I was just the lowly fellow over in the corner, but watching him work on different plays and just seeing like what he was able to create and the way that like he really like, I think how as much as any lighting designer I've ever worked with was really like, it was like you were watching like a sculptor work. The way that he would define a space or a character was just incredible. And some of that, if you watch that streaming Hamilton, you're able to see some of the work. I mean, when you see it live, like it really is so impressive. Like the way he creates the hurricane or the boxes that he draws around Aaron Burr, just the way that he does all that is just genius. Really good stuff.
If you could go back in time and talk to your younger self, what advice would you tell yourself about your profession?
Yeah, I would say you have to be resilient, right? Learn what it means to have grit and to keep moving forward. I think that that's a really important one that we don't talk about enough is this idea of resilience. I would also say it's okay to say no. It's okay to say no. I mean, I worked on a lot of projects as a really young director just because I was scared that if I said no, I would never get another gig. But they were plays, sometimes that I didn't relate to. They were fine plays, but they just weren't for me. And they weren't stories that I should be telling, I think. And then what happens is you're not putting your best foot forward because you're not in relation to that play. So then sometimes it can be more detrimental to say yes to something that you don't believe in, because then people see the work as kind of like, you know what I mean? Versus like saying, no, that's not me, and waiting for the next thing to come, or pursuing the thing that you want to do and taking that to different theaters and saying, how about this show? I always wish when I was younger that when I look back, I wish that I had always had responded to those moments with not that show, but what about this one? And I learned that way too late. So yeah, I think in theater in general, we have a hard time saying no. I think it would serve actors well to say no sometimes too, to be like, that's just not for me, but we're also scared that the next job isn't ever coming.
Right.
Exactly.
We say yes to it,
What's the first thing you want to do when we get out of all this crisis with the pandemic? They're similar, but it's two different things. I want to go to a live baseball game and drink a beer, and I want to go to a concert and drink a beer.
But
Yeah.
yeah, like I just, and I'm pretty introverted, but I just didn't realize until these last few months how much I do crave being, being out and in groups of people.
Right.
Mhm.
It's been shocking to me how much I miss that. It's probably true too that like because the theater's closed, I don't even get that fix of a group of people coming
Right.
together. But I love sporting events and I love music, and so to be able to experience that again will be really, really great.
Yeah.
Yay, go Yankees.
Right.
Okay.
Now I have a question to you guys, since you're both the directors.
Yeah.
Now actors have these dreams, which I do all the time. The play is ended, and then later I'll have a dream that I'm in a show, I have not learned the lines, and I'm just trying to work through. What is the director's nightmare?
That you didn't learn your lines.
Yeah, exactly.
Boom, boom, boom.
Yes.
That's great.
I'm kidding.
No, that's great.
I don't know. Kathleen, what would you say?
I think that you cast the wrong people.
Hmm.
Oh.
Because when you do cast the perfect people, it's a breeze, and not a breeze, but it's so easy and everything fits together. So I think that is the nightmare of, what if so-and-so didn't come out for that play and I had to find somebody else?
Right.
What would it have been like? I
Right.
think that's what I'd say.
I've been in a couple of shows where there were long shows and it took a long process. And I think the director and the cast just ran out of energy by the last scene. And you could see that, oh, wow, everything's great until like the last couple of scenes. It's like they just ran out of time.
Yeah,
Right.
that can happen.
Right.
I think for me, it's more of a like, I wake up kind of a lot during, like once the show's open, thinking, oh, I could have done this better.
Right.
Like that for me, it really comes after opening is
Right.
when I start to go, oh man. And for Curious Incident, it happened while I was watching it the last weekend. Like there was this one sequence that we struggled with during rehearsals. It was me and my movement director, now our executive director, Heather Strickland, and Rachel Potter Nunn, who was the assistant director. And we worked and worked and worked. And then I'm watching it the last weekend, and I texted them and I was like, I just figured it out. And I told them what it was, and they were like, yep, that would have done it. That would have been it. So those are the kind of nightmare moments for me.
Yeah, there's still
great.
plays from the 1980s I want to go back and say, I would do it so much better now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, Patrick, thank you so much for joining us. This has been great fun.
Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah,
It's been fun.
very good. And I hope to see you in person again soon.
Me too.
So thank
At a
you.
sporting event or a musical event, right?
Oh,
Love it.
yes.
Right.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye. Take
Bye.
care.